what is my story and how can I better tell my story to, one, relate to people, two, inspire people, because you never know what it is that you went through and how that can hopefully help propel someone else to get started on their own journey. But founder mission stories and what it is that you aim to solve with your product is something that you can be doing no matter what. It doesn't need to be tied to a news peg. It doesn't need to be tied to a seasonal hook like Black History Month or Women's History Month or Pride Month. You should be telling your founder story all year round.
You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Black to Business Podcast. It is your favorite host, Monique T. Marshall, and today we are getting into a challenge that many entrepreneurs face, and that is how to secure press coverage when it feels like there's no big news to share. So it's a common misconception that only major announcements can attract media attention, but that is simply not the case. In a competitive environment where visibility is crucial for success, knowing how to craft your own news moments can really elevate your brand's profile. And joining us today is Brennan Nevada Johnson, the founder of Brennan Nevada Inc., New York's only Black female-owned award-winning tech PR agency. With accolades that include partnerships with renowned clients like Solo Funds and Renda ATL, just to name a few, and features in top-tier publications like Fast Company, Teen Vogue, and NBC News, Brennan has spent over a decade honing her craft in media and communications. So in today's episode, she's going to share practical insights on how you can elevate your narrative and build valuable relationships with journalists, even when it seems like you're lacking news. And we're also going to dive into how to identify compelling stories within your journey, leverage your expertise, and create your own buzz in the press. So let's get into it. Brennan, welcome to the Black to Business Podcast. I'm excited to officially chat with you on the podcast. I know we've been having such a fun time even before this conversation, but welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Monique, for having me. You know, I love Black to Business, so let's get it started.
Yeah, I am excited to talk with you today about a topic that I think is so key for our audience because a lot of people have the same question. How do I get press if I don't have anything or any news to talk about? So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So I'm so excited about it. But yeah, before we dive in, I want to get the people familiar with who you are and your background. So if you could just share a little bit about your background, how did you get where you are today? And what is it that you actually do in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So Brennan Nevada Inc. is my PR agency. We specialize in partnering with startups, tech companies, venture capitalists to help boost their media presence, generate press coverage, amplify their thought leadership presence. And we do all of this through earned media communication, speaking, events, and awards. So we are based out of Harlem, New York City, and we really pride ourselves on being able to master the art of storytelling. And I'm so excited to dive into this conversation with you because PR and press is something that every founder business should definitely be investing in if they haven't already. We have spent over a decade of our career working, launching some of the biggest Black-owned businesses in the country and the world, including Solo Funds. They are a leading peer-to-peer lending marketplace that is rooted in community finance. Render Atlanta is one of the largest software engineering conferences in the world. We also represent some incredible venture capitalists like Zane Venture Fund, which is run by Shyla Nieves-Burney, who are all invested in representing underrepresented founders. So that's a little bit more about myself. I'm media obsessed, and I definitely want to be able to empower the viewers and listeners of Black to Business with ways that they can find how to tell their story when they don't have news at the current moment.
Yeah, and it's been such a pleasure to work with you and your team. We've had a couple of your clients on the podcast, and it's been such a joy just to hear them share their story and also to work with you all. So it's been a pleasure. And I'm glad that we get to share.
Do it without you.
I love it. And so we are getting into, first I want to get into the intro of like securing press coverage. So Brennan, can you talk about what it means or looks like to secure press coverage when you don't have that major news event or announcement? What does it mean?
Yeah. So it means you've got to get creative. You can't just rely on when something is being announced with your company. So it takes time to unveil a new product. It takes time to hire new people. It takes time to secure funding. And what a lot of businesses end up getting wrong when they think about PR is they feel that they can't initiate PR agencies, partners, services because they don't have news. And oftentimes what businesses see PR as the only thing at the end result, which is that headline. They see the link, they see the podcast episode in Black to Business, and they don't understand all of the nuances that get to landing that media opportunity. And so in order to be able to generate news, create urgency with media, you have to be really creative and pretty much very thought-provoking in how it is that you want to insert your brand, your point of view, your insights in the current newscape. We already know that like the news landscape is very cluttered. There's a lot going on. And so being able to realize strategic inroads for telling your story is something that I definitely want to make sure that a lot of people are tapping into more than they haven't been already.
It's so good. And Brennan, a lot of entrepreneurs who listen to the podcast are in those early stages. So they might be thinking, why does this matter for me at this stage? I'm just getting started. So why would you say it's crucial for businesses, especially in those early days, to actively seek that press coverage, even if they don't have that significant news hook?
Yes, that's such a good question. And I think what every founder, regardless of the scale that your business is at, whether you're starting off, whether you just finished an accelerator or you just secured your funding round, seed or series A, B, D, you name it, this is a part of your go-to-market strategy. And when you're first starting out, no one knows you. And I think what a lot of businesses fail to recognize is that social media is not enough. Having a newsletter or a blog is not enough. You have to get very aggressive and find ways to leverage public relations so that you are promoting and telling your story, because that is what is going to make you resonate most with customers. That's what's going to help grow and scale your business, make you memorable. And without that, regardless of what size your business is at or how long or early you've been around for, you have to recognize that PR is a part of just being able to be relevant at all times. It's very easy in today's landscape where there's hundreds and thousands of different products out there, potentially even in the same industries as to what a business is doing. How are you standing out? What are you doing that's going to hook a customer and have them purchase and be loyal to your brand versus a competitor? And chances are, a lot of times when you're seeing a company that is performing well, number-wise, revenue-wise, growing, expanding, they generally do have a public relations team, because that department, right, Monique, is so crucial to being able to get you out there. So I always say that no matter how early or how late stage your business is, you should always invest in public relations. This isn't something that is a nice to have. It's now become a must have.
And I certainly agree. And even in the interactions we have within Black to Business, I do say oftentimes, I love working with people who already have that team, that PR team, because it's so easy. It's good.
Yes, we're really valuable. And I love that you mentioned that, Monique, because PR people, we get a bad rep, and not just by founders who don't believe in it. It's also this really delicate balance between how we work with journalists like yourselves and producers like yourselves. And PR people are the ones who are connecting all the dots.
Yeah.
We're the ones who are putting companies on your radar that you've never heard about. And so I love the fact that you really cherish your relationships with PR people, because we help businesses succeed. That's really what our end game is.
Certainly. Yep. I got to give it to you all. And now, Brendan, you've also worked with, as you mentioned before, some very powerful brands like Render ATL, Solo Funds, and so many more. And speaking to those who are in those earlier stages, just making it plain, can you talk about maybe there was a time where you had a client who did secure media coverage without that major news event and what that looks like?
Yes. So I'm going to run you through several different ways that you can create news when you don't have news, or when you're just starting out and you don't really know where to begin. So every single business has an origin story. And PR, we like to call this your founder story. What is the reason as to why you created your business? Clearly, there is a problem that you hope to solve with your product, or there is something that you experienced in your personal or professional life that you want to change. And that journey, that entrepreneur journey that you embarked on, is one way that you can always insert yourself into the news. So even this great podcast here, Black to Business, we pitched this concept based off of our expertise in the PR industry. We didn't have any news. We came up with a sexy, compelling angle that we thought would resonate with the listeners of the show. And that's what founders can do. It's tapping into why you started this business. What is my story? And how can I better tell my story to, one, relate to people, two, inspire people, because you never know what it is that you went through and how that can hopefully help propel someone else to get started on their own journey. But founder mission stories and what it is that you aim to solve with your product is something that you can be doing no matter what. It doesn't need to be tied to a news peg. It doesn't need to be tied to a seasonal hook like Black History Month or Women's History Month or Pride Month. You should be telling your founder story all year round. And you can do it through podcasts. You can do it through online news sites. You can do it via broadcast TV stations. There's just so many different channels and ways that you can tap into it. So that's one way that early stage founders who might not be at the stage of some of the clients that Brennan Nevada Inc. represents, those clients, they started out the same way. They weren't always the biggest, company in their specific industry. And what they did was they relied on their community, they relied on their network, and they relied on their unique personal stories. So always, always, always unpack your founder story, because that can really help change the game and get you that consistent press coverage that you're hoping for.
Yeah. And speaking of that consistent and always sharing your founder story, how do you think that this benefits these businesses in the long run?
Yes, absolutely. So when you talk about who you are as a business and you kind of give an inside look, you lift up the hood and see what is underneath, what is driving this business, that ends up helping you resonate and connect more with your customer. At the end of the day, the reason why some businesses take off is because you know so much about the founder. You know why they're doing it. You know where they're from, right, Monique? You feel like you're a part of the journey with them. And I feel that so many businesses, actually every business has a founder story, has something that is so compelling as to why they're doing what they're doing, and they just haven't yet discovered it. And so always having press coverage through other means like newsjacking, which we can get into a bit more, which is all about taking advantage of what's happening in the news cycle at the moment that you are able to comment on. There's so many different ways that you can just continue to insert yourself. And founders definitely are the core spokespeople of their brands. Of course, when you become bigger, you can definitely leverage other team members who can insert themselves into the news. But at the end of the day, the founder is the one person who can make you relate to them. You get to connect with them. You almost feel like a friend who is along for the ride with them. And that is what is going to separate a winning business from one that is just surviving.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That is so good. Oh, so many questions. So many questions. And when you were saying that, one of the questions that comes up for me, playing devil's advocate, but also asking for myself, is what about for those business owners who are thinking, I don't want it to be about me. I don't want to make it about me. It's about the business. Or maybe they don't want to be the face of their business. Like, what advice would you say around the media coverage and press for those people?
That is such a good question. And I'm going to give you the honest truth. I push back on my clients, and my clients still are like, I don't want it to be me. And I'm like, but it has to be. Because at the end of the day, it has to be. You are so close to this business in ways that it doesn't matter who else on your team is amazing or stellar. Those people definitely deserve to have their voices out there. That is no doubt. But I always push back and explain to a founder why you should always be the core spokesperson. And even when they don't want to be, there are ways that you can insert your brand through not just getting profiles on you as a CEO or a founder or an entrepreneur. That's such a good point that you brought up, Monique. There's other ways that you can be out there as the spokesperson, but without having to so be the face of the brand. That could be through thought leadership, which is bylines and contributing articles and publishing op-eds and news outlets. That can be ways that you are inserting your opinion and you're sharing your viewpoints about different trends and moments that are currently happening. And so there's other ways where you don't have to like only expect, oh my gosh, it's just going to be me everywhere. I think that it needs to be a healthy mix and balance, because sometimes when you're only focused on trying to generate profiles, that's when it feels that you aren't really contributing so much so that other people can kind of take away learnings from your business. But at the end of the day, it is up to the founder, the people within the C-suite to set the tone. And you have to be open and push yourself and challenge yourself really to get out there. But there's other ways to do it where you're not just only talking about yourself. You're not just only talking about the business. You can tap into thought leadership, op-eds, like I mentioned before, and it's still putting you out there without all of the focus being on you.
All right, fine.
That was a lot.
It was what we didn't want to hear, but we know we need to hear.
Yes.
So, thank you. And now that we know this, let's talk about identifying and crafting that story. So how can business owners identify that compelling story when they don't have that big announcement?
Right, exactly. So we spoke about founder stories. The other thing that I think is so important is newsjacking, which we'll go into, as well as data storytelling. So newsjacking, just to give the high level overview of what this is. In the PR world, we are constantly monitoring the news. We have to be on top of everything that's going on, because even if our client is selling a product, there is something that is happening in the news cycle that relates to the industry that they're in. And so it's our job to make sure that we can showcase that our clients are experts. They can talk about more than just their product. I always say, like, I'm never impressed when people can only just talk about their business. I'm like, okay, anyone can do that. How are you talking more about the industry as a whole so that other people, again, back to what we said earlier, can take away those learnings? And so newsjacking, and I'll give you an example of it. So my client Solo Funds, they have this great founder who, of course, is our main spokesperson. And this company is remarkable and hasn't really had tangible news in quite some time. Yet they're constantly getting press coverage. They're constantly being interviewed. In fact, you interviewed them yourself. And what we did is we know that they're in the financial services industry, the fintech industry, financial technology. So whenever there's news going on around the finances, whether it's inflation, whether it's, the cost of goods going up and the impact that has on consumer wallets, or being able to share financial tips that empower consumers to better manage their money, we have been able to get the founder of Solo Funds in the press on a consistent basis, offering insights, sharing tips about ways to better your money. And those are things that are constantly happening. If you turn on the news every second of every day, it's something about the economy. It's something about how expensive groceries are, or it's something about junk fees and hidden fees that, consumers aren't expecting. We know that Solo Funds is an expert and actually has data that can speak to each of those touch points. And we make sure that we are offering up editors, journalists, producers like yourself, like, hey, we have this great expert who can help your viewers, your listeners, your readers be able to better understand the nuances of how the financial industry works so that they can best be prepared. And so newsjacking is something that you can do at any time, whether you're a female-owned business or you're in women's health. Think about the current environment that's happening and find ways that you can just tackle onto what's currently being reported on and be able to get your clients' point of views out there. And so we do a bunch of newsjacking. The other point too that you had asked a great question about earlier, Monique, is data storytelling. So data is king. You see it all the time where there's a survey or there's a report or there's something that has very compelling statistics that is being covered over the news, and it's being covered for a long duration of time. You'll see studies that came out in 2022, 2023 that are still being reported on today, that are still being referenced in credible news outlets to this day, because data truthfully doesn't die. And I say that because every business has some form of data that they can tap into. So whether you're a business to consumer business or whether you're a business selling to businesses, you have some form of data based off of the services or the product that you're offering that you can tap into. So whether it's, patterns or trends or things that you are noticing, look at the data, look at what that's telling you. And that is something that journalists love. They love to be able to find new hooks and stories that is backed by something very credible. And it really doesn't get better than doing data storytelling.
That is so good. And also because I feel like you answered this question, but my next question was around some key elements that make a story or pitch stand out to those journalists and media outlets. Yeah,
that's such a great question, Monique. So the first thing that a company should always do is, one, get yourself a PR person. That's number one. I always tell people, if you are a founder thinking that you are pitching yourself and it's going to resonate, it actually doesn't, because the PR person is the one who's going to help you spin it so that it interests whoever it is that you're targeting. But the second thing really that you should be doing is always consider the audience of what it is that you want to be telling a story to. So a pitch to Black to business is going to be a different pitch to, say, the Financial Times. It's two different audiences. It's two different target people. So you always have to keep that in mind, because you want to make sure that whatever it is that you're spinning is relevant. So always know your audience. That is first and foremost. Number two, try to find something that is new. Right? At the end of the day, you hear PR people say, or you hear journalists or media folks say, like, oh, that's old news. That's old. What's next? What's hot? What's fresh? Always try to think of something that has not really been covered before and is something that will interest other people, and not just people within your company. I think what a lot of people get wrong with PR is that they think that everything is a news announcement or everything is so sexy and compelling to people that work there, right? Like when you take it out of your organization, at the end of the day, no one really cares. And so you always have to find ways, right, Monique, to be able to communicate to people that are not within your organization that could be a potential buyer, but are also just interested in what it is that you have to say. So just making sure that the news that or the story angle that you're trying to pitch, it's fresh, it hasn't been covered before. And then the other thing too is create that urgency. At the end of the day, people like Monique, people like these editors at all of these outlets, they are getting thousands of pitches a day. Their inboxes are so cluttered. How do you hope and plan to stand out? And one of the ways that you can always do that is by reaching out and saying, hey, Monique, hey, Brennan, I'm working with these great companies. Are you writing any stories at the moment where you need a source where any of the below can help contribute insights to what it is that you're putting together? That can oftentimes lead to really quick and fast wins for you, where you're letting a journalist know, like, hey, we have really great people who can provide the information that you are maybe lacking from your story. And those tend to be written up in quotes. Those tend to be experts that you see that are on the virtual Zoom with the anchors at different news outlets. And so making sure that you are always being a resource to a journalist and offering ways to help them. That is one of the things that you have to be doing to build and establish relationships. At the end of the day, it should never only be focused just on you. It's how can I help this journalist, this outlet, this story, so that everyone from the reader to the person pitching it to the interviewer are having their time being cherished and valuable.
Mm-hmm. Brennan, you are on fire. I am just over here like, oh, all the things like that mean like that's what I'm talking about. Like all of this.
Monique, I can do this all day.
Yeah, it's so good because I'm like, yeah, it's definitely some of the things that raises my brows, like not knowing about the type of person that you're pitching to, and it's like this all makes it easier for everyone. So I love this is great. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And just to double click on that, Monique, I love what you said about it being easier on everyone. I think what people fail to recognize is how busy media is. Right. And on deadlines. And you have people not always understanding that the news works on deadlines. Yeah. And you have to always consider that with what you're pitching. So don't always expect a journalist like Monique to be able to jump on the phone. Make it easy for them. Share emailed comments, like provide it to them in a way where it's all packaged up nice and pretty with a little bow on it, so that those journalists can utilize their time to the best of their ability. At the end of the day, everyone is on a crunch for time. And I think it's so important that whenever you are interacting with the media, that you are very respectful of their time. And one of those lessons too, is to realize that sometimes it might not be the right time. So for example, right, Monique? So for example, when Biden dropped out of the race, I let all my clients know, I was like, let me just be very clear. We are not pitching your story this week. We are not pitching anything that relates to your business this week, because every single journalist, every single outlet is prioritizing that news. And if you think that you're going to get your story told during this time, it's only going to fall on deaf ears. And frankly, you're delusional. And all my clients, they got it. They were like, we aligned, we agree, because you need to really just understand, like, there's times to go for it. And then there's definitely times where it's like, okay, let me just let this news cycle kind of run its course. There's always going to be a time to, tell our story or provide thought leadership. But I think it's so important too, as a business, to recognize when to, hit pause and not send that email or that pitch.
Yes, I totally agree. And and so in all of this, what role do you feel like authenticity plays into when you're crafting that story and trying to make sure that it resonates not only with media, but also the audience?
Yes, you have to be authentic. At the end of the day, that is what great storytelling is. When you think about our favorite storytellers, whether late or still here to this day, it's Obama, it's MLK, it's Oprah. I mean, these people are very authentic in what it is that they're sharing. And at the end of the day, that translates to more of that connection. You have a bigger impact when you're just being honest. You know, what I end up doing even for myself is I have a column in a news site where it's all about workplace and professional news. And I was honest about a lot of the challenges that I had gone through just in the workplace, whether it was being fired or whether it was working with a micromanager and how I navigated that. But I was honest and I was myself. And at the end of the day, that is your biggest superpower, because nobody can do you like you. You know, I always see people try to mimic, right? I always see people try to mimic someone. And I definitely think that that can definitely benefit you in some ways, but it'll only get you so far. Every single founder, especially Black founders, we all have a story that is so unique to us that deserves to be told. And so you have to be true. You have to be authentic. Don't try to be like everyone else, because sometimes what you're seeing is not even the case. And you end up being able to tell your story in more impactful ways when you do talk about some of the challenges and the setbacks and the obstacles. You know, you there's always those people on social media or in the news that are just trying to highlight, like, these are all the successes, these are all the wins. And you're like, bullshit. Like, it is not all rainbows, butterflies, and sunshines. And I think it's really important to showcase all that you are doing, what you're building, what those challenges and setbacks have been, how you came up with solutions. But being authentic and being yourself and being transparent throughout the entire storytelling journey is a must, because otherwise it's very easy to spot the people that are just trying to get likes, the people that are very clickbaity, and then you read the article and you're like, what is this? Like, this didn't even make me feel anything. Whenever you are being published or you're sharing insights, your end goal should always be that this is going to help someone and also heal you in the process.
Right. Yeah. I love it. And I want to shift gears just a bit and talk about building relationships with media. So how can businesses start to build these relationships with journalists and media professionals?
Yes. Monique, this is one of my favorite questions. So again, like we said earlier, media are very busy. They are juggling numerous things. They are on deadline. And one of the things that I have relied on is I do think in person is always going to be relevant and of interest. You know, of course, we just came out of a pandemic. Everything's remote. People were doing virtual coffees. I was never into that. I'm like, let me take you to lunch, right? And I just recently wrote an article about this, Monique, where it's like, you know, taking a journalist out, whether it's to lunch or dinner, food can be a game changer when it comes to talking and meeting someone, because you're connecting over something and your sole focus isn't just on the business. You get to see this person outside of work. And at the end of the day, journalists are people too. We really want to be working with those that we like, that we respect, that we value. And so get out of your comfort zone of trying to just hide behind a computer screen or just DMing people. Like, ask that person out to lunch. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? No, I'm unavailable. Okay, but you tried. And that journalist, chances are going to see like, oh, wow, like this person is making a conscious effort to build a relationship with me. So one, take someone out, meet up with them. You have a much better chance at one, being able to be memorable. When you're in person with someone, you get to showcase your personality. You don't always get the chance to do that over a virtual conversation. And so try your hardest to offer up a one-to-one lunch. Let them know, like, hey, I know you're at a crunch for time. Where are your offices based? Where are you located? I'll come to you. I mean, I even literally said that to you, Monique, before we started this recording. I was like, you're in Brooklyn? Oh my God, I'm going to come take you out. You have to really put yourself out there. So that's one thing that founders, PR people, anyone interested in having a relationship, building it with a journalist, you should always consider doing a business lunch or some type of meal. The second, too, is being able to also, as I mentioned earlier, offer yourself up as a resource. So, for example, Monique's doing this podcast. She has these incredible Black founders, entrepreneurs. Hey, Monique, I'm not sure what your schedule is for the remainder of the season of the show, but in case you're looking for other guests, I'd love to offer up X, Y, and Z. You give a little blurb, you give a brief link to who each person is, what it is that they can contribute, so that when a Monique is looking at it, she can see like, wow, this person just made my job so much easier. And that then has a Monique trusting you and going back to you as someone who's like, okay, you know what? If I need a resource, if I need a source for my specific story podcast, I know that I can rely on this individual because they've come through in the past and they understand how I work. And then the last thing, and I think we mentioned this earlier, Monique, but it's also recognizing when to fall back. A journalist is always very busy. And I think it's so important that business owners, PR people do not bombard them. Stop following up a zillion times. I guarantee you that journalists saw your email, but they're also dealing with tons of other emails and deadlines and stories that they have to put together and submit. And so oftentimes what my journalists and media friendlies tell me is that they like working with me because I know when to back off. I know when to not be following up and chasing, because at the end of the day, if it's a story, they will let you know. And they'll let you know either quick, or it could be a situation where it might be months down the line where, they get back to you and it's like, hey, Monique, hey, Brennan, sorry for the delay on this. I was working on a lot of stuff, but now I'm working on a story that relates to your client. Can you set something up for us? And so I think it's really important to just always remember that who you are talking to at the end of the computer or over a business meal or via the phone, that's a person too. And no one wants to be hounded, bombarded. You have to really just recognize, like, if it's meant for you, it will always be for you. It's really that simple.
Yes. And I love that you said that on the timing as well, because even when I think about Black to Business, there are so many times we have a whole list of like, these are future reference. It's not now. And we were looking at someone the other day and it was like, oh, wow, they reached out in like July, but we've recorded so much, but it was like, okay, this is the timing for now.
Right.
And yeah, it's true. It's so true. So it's not
right.
Forever.
That's right.
Yeah. And also, how do you, so for you, I feel like you're really good at this, is maintaining and nurturing relationships. So what advice will you have for entrepreneurs in order to maintain and nurture these relationships over time?
Absolutely. So I always like to also just check in. If you're not in the same city or location as, these journalists, that's okay. Just check in like, hey, how are you doing? Like, it doesn't always have to be about work. And that's what people fail to recognize, is that they try to be very self-serving when they think of a journalist. They always think, what can you do for me? And it's like, slow your roll. How are you doing? Good morning. Like, how was your weekend? Like, oh, I just saw Beetlejuice, or I just saw this movie. Like, be personable. Just stop trying to always, come out of it for something for you. Like, just make sure that you're finding ways that you can check in with the journalists who you either have worked with or you hope to work with. Get to know them. So I always like to check in. I also, as I mentioned, like I'm constantly going to lunch with journalists because I love eating with these journalists. I think that they are some of the most funny, compelling people ever. And being able to always share that meal, share a crab cake with somebody, I mean, it just changes the entire game of your relationship. So also do that. But then at the end of the day, too, invite them to stuff as well. Like, it doesn't just have to be a business meal. It can be like, hey, my client's doing something that is, close to you, or there's this big networking event. Do you want to come by? Are you available? Are you free? It's just making sure that you're taking the super boring, worky stuff out of it. And you're remembering that this is someone who probably also wants an escape. This is someone where, they're not hoping to have the entire duration of their time with you spent talking about your client, talking about your business. They want to know who you are as well. And that's how you build meaningful relationships. It's always remembering that the other person could potentially be a friend, or if not a friend, a really good acquaintance, and leave work to like the end of it. And one thing I learned too, Monique, that I'll say is that in Europe, they don't talk about work at lunch. You know, I'm watching Emily in Paris. Yeah. I'm watching Emily in Paris when I was in Europe, and I came with the American culture of like, oh my God, we were at a lunch with my coworkers. I have to be talking about work. And I literally almost got like chastised for like speaking about business at work. And it's like, know when to just level set, be able to balance it too. And, you know, I think that it's very important to just always try to get to learn and know more about someone, because chances are you have so much in common beyond just what it is that you think that you're trying to pitch to them.
I like that. Yeah. And you talked about like even just inviting people to places and also just unplugging. And I want to talk about how businesses can leverage those existing connections that they already have to get introduced to media professionals.
That is so good. So it's exactly what you insinuated. So one of the things that I've done for my business is, say if a client is speaking at an event, they don't have a moderator, they don't have anyone who is going to facilitate the conversation, I will think of a journalist who has either worked with the client, who the client has really had a great rapport with, and I'll offer, hey, do you want to attend this conference? We'll pay for all your travel accommodations, but are you interested in being involved and moderating and hosting this really compelling conversation? So that is one way to always just make sure that you are giving just appreciation to the journalist, because at the end of the day, when you see that headline, when you see a podcast episode, the chances are that it has been earned, meaning there is no pay-per-play, there's no sponsorship, there's no dollars put behind it. And that journalist saw something within your story or what it is that you saw, that you said, and they felt compelled to be able to write about it, to be able to report on it. And so I'm always thinking about ways that I can just bring those journalists who've truthfully done us favors and be able to involve them in the next thing, whether it's something that is happening 10 days from now or a year from now, just letting them know like, hey, we're constantly thinking about you. Another thing that journalists do appreciate, and I appreciate too, this is something that businesses, they do for their staff, right? They do this for the people that work for them. You know, be considerate and send holiday gift bags and gift baskets. And that is something that I always make it a priority to do with my business. You know, my business, Brennan Nevada Inc., would not be successful if it's not for the Moniques, the Black to businesses of the world, these other outlets and journalists that have supported me, that have amplified my clients' stories. And so you have to be able to, I always say, you got to spend some money to make some money. And, you know, nothing is better than a personalized gift. Even if it's like a virtual personalized card, whatever you can afford, it doesn't need to be some crazy, super expensive thing. But, you know, being able to just show that you really enjoy working, speaking, collaborating with someone, and that can be done through gift. And when you think about the timing of, you know, right now, we're entering the holiday gift giving season. It's a very powerful time to just be able to kind of wrap up the years and reflect, but also like look forward and thanking the people that have been able to help your business thrive and take off.
I like that. I am definitely going to implement that.
Yes.
I love that.
Monique, you'll be getting a basket later this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's great advice. And speaking of, so you touched on it just a little bit in that response, is the pay to play. So what are your thoughts on that? And especially around the topic that we're speaking on today, if people don't have, you know, these big announcements, but you've given us so many strategies. So they might be thinking, okay, with this, I got to pay to play. So what are your thoughts on that? And yeah.
That is such a good question. So if I'm being honest, Monique, I personally do not do or really believe in the impact of pay to play. I will say that it definitely is a model that is needed, because I want every single outlet podcast to be around forever. So I actually love advertisers. I love commercials. I love stuff like that because I know that is the reason why I'm able to even consume content. So I definitely think that there needs to always be a home for it. And it's also just such a great medium to be able to get in front of a wide range of people if you are looking to go that route. But for me, I do not prioritize that. I specifically go after earned. So if it's a really compelling story, if it's unique, if it's hot, if it's fresh, if it's hot off the press, I am going to do everything that I can to try to find a home or an outlet to take that story, to publish it, and to run with it. I think it's really clear, especially in today's editorial realm, when something is paid for. And it doesn't come off as it's authentic. And that's what you were kind of alluding to earlier with the authenticity and how important that is in storytelling. When you pay for something, anyone can buy space in a magazine and pay to have their products promoted. But when you come across a story about a product or a person or a really powerful opinion piece, and it doesn't say sponsored underneath it, that is because there is something so deep within that framework that has resonated with the editors. It's resonated with the website. It's resonated with the people that are consuming it. And so sponsorship is something that should always be around. For me, it's something that I do not invest in, but if ever clients are like, hey, we have this news, and I went into this earlier where, just because everyone at your company thinks it's great doesn't mean that it's great, put that over the newswire. So I will suggest to some clients, put this up on your blog. If your blog doesn't have that many eyeballs on it, or you don't have a lot of social media followers, definitely put this across the newswire. And that's, something that can reach a multitude of different outlets, targets. It definitely says newswire on it. So that it was paid for. And the chances of that truthfully being able to resonate with a buyer or a customer, it slims down, it decreases. And so I always say to founders, definitely explore that as your last route, but good storytelling, it should always be free.
Love it. And so, of course, people want to be informed, and when they're going into and getting professional help. So I also want to talk about what a media plan is for people who might be working with an expert, and what does it look like for someone who isn't launching a new product or service?
Yes, that is so good. So really, media plans should be done quarter over quarter. This is not something where, it's 2024, it's about to be 2025. Let's put together our entire plan for the whole year. Magazines do that. I will say different outlets do that. But when you think about PR, so much changes. And even in the editorial realm, so much is changing over a week, even over a month. And so you can't be stuck to that. You have to be flexible. You have to be able to adapt, but you should be putting together media quarterly plans after each quarter. And so, for example, my business right now, we presented all of our quarterly 4 plans to our clients, letting them know these are the tactics, these are the opportunities to insert your brand, to insert your point of view for the next 3 months before the year is up. This is the strategy. These are the targets. This is how we're going to do it. And so without a plan, you're really going to fall flat, and you're not going to be able to tell your story because media moves so quickly. And when you have a plan, you're ready. You don't have to get ready. That's my biggest mantra. And I tell all my clients, let's stay ready so that we don't have to get ready, because as you're getting ready, you've already missed the window. You've already missed the wave. The media moves so quickly. So always come up with a plan. Think about what's happening in the current moment. So for example, we're in election season. Every single business, whether you like it or not, you should be thinking about a way to be relevant with all the clutterness that is happening around election coverage. On top of that, we're entering Spooktober. So, scary, podcast tips that you should avoid could be something that Monique does, or scary PR mistakes or fear of PR. Get cheeky with it. Have fun with it. PR should be so much fun. You know, PR is something that is not stale. It is not boring. You got to be able to get very creative. For November, you know, we're entering the holiday season. It's Thanksgiving. It's giving back. It's charity. It's philanthropy. So how can you talk and insert yourself there? And same thing with like December. It's that gift giving. It's looking ahead. It's, you know, what happened in 2024, what's going to be happening in 2025, looking at the predictions and trends to come and being really futuristic. Those are just a few things that founders can be tapping into. Like, what should my business or my industry be expecting for 2025? That is a press story that every single founder, no matter what industry you're in, can be exploring.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things you also mentioned earlier is just the fact that social media isn't enough. But I also want to talk about what role does content marketing play in this media strategy when you don't have the news?
Yes, exactly. So content marketing is so important. And it's one of the services that we provide within my agency. And so content that we do is we write a lot of these articles. As I mentioned before, news outlets, they have very limited bandwidth. And some of them are, you know, experiencing mass layoffs where the newsrooms are shrinking. And these editors and journalists don't always have the capacity to be able to tell your story. And so you need to have good writers on your team. And at the end of the day, a founder is very, very busy doing a lot of things, which is why you need to outsource. You should always outsource PR. I do believe that PR is always more results driven when they're outsourced versus when they're just in-house, because sometimes when you're too close to the product, you tend to only think very narrow-mindedly about it. Whereas when you're outsourced and you're not working within the company, but you're treated as a team member and you operate like a team member, you end up being able to find more unique ways to get that client featured in the press. So that is one component of it, but content is huge. You have to have great writers on your team. You know, a press release is not enough. You need to be able to write a compelling, sexy article that a news outlet is going to want to publish. You need to be able to have an opinion that is fresh, that's new, that hasn't been done before. And content is king, just like data is king. There's all types of content, from long form content, white papers, anything, truthfully. But we do a bunch of content. We rely on thought leadership articles extensively, even when you're seeing different awards lists and speaking opportunities. Those are abstracts and proposals that have to be written up. And so content, without it, you are not going to be able to get your story told. And PR is going to be much less impactful if you are only putting all of your eggs in either just social media or something else. Like, you have to do content marketing, you have to do earned media, you have to do thought leadership. It's really a package deal.
Mm-hmm. And I agree. And Brennan, this has been so good. It's the perfect segue because you've given us so many tips. And even though I'm over here like, okay, Spooky October, that's what it's called.
Yes.
I love it. And so people are like, okay, how can we work with Brennan? And I want to talk about how others can get in touch with you. I know you mentioned some of the clients that you work with, but how they can get in touch with you and how that process works.
Yes. So please connect with me on LinkedIn. I am at Brennan Nevada Johnson at LinkedIn. So if you type in that in your search, you will find me. Please connect. My business page is also on LinkedIn as Brennan Nevada Inc. I have a website as well, which is www.brennannevadainc.com. There's so many N's in my name, but you'll be able to figure it out. And, you know, especially with my business, and this is something that I really pride myself on, is that Brennan Nevada Inc. is incredibly mission driven. For one, we are the only New York City based PR agency that is Black, female owned, and catered to startups, tech companies and venture capitalists. This is an industry that is incredibly white, and our clients have seen the benefits of working with a founder that looks like them, who can relate to them, because we obviously, as a result of that, are able to tell their stories better. So I am very passionate about working and representing Black-owned companies. In fact, 87% of my business is representing Black-owned companies. The others are women, Jewish, Latina. And I think it's just so important that PR is leveraged to help these businesses scale, to help get them in front of key decision makers, stakeholders, investors. And so always reach out. We are so much fun to work with. As you can see, I am bubbly out of my mind, but that is what you want for your PR partner. So find me at all of those channels, but do not expect to find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I have retired both of those for years. So LinkedIn is the spot to find me. Yes.
You said LinkedIn you are not on?
I am on LinkedIn. Okay. I am not on Twitter or Instagram.
Oh, Twitter, Instagram. Gotcha. Yeah, I agree with the Twitter one now. The Instagram, there's some questions, but I get it. And also, I would love to know, just shifting as you as a founder, how do you stay balanced? And like you mentioned, high energy, still bubbly, but manage all the things and make time for yourself?
Yes, Monique, that is such a great question. As a founder, you have got to carve out time for yourself. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you will burn out. You will start to get really tired and over what it is that you're building. And you might even give up because you just have not been able to give yourself the time to rest, recharge, and rejuvenate. And so I do a number of things. I go to the gym. I work out, even though I can't stand the gym. I know that that is my time for me. I am in the sauna, sweating out all my frustrations as well. So I found that being very active has been a huge game changer. I also talk to my mom like every single day, and not just texting. I mean, on the phone. Yes, exactly, Monique. Like, no one loves you more than your mama. Mm-hmm. Your mom wants you to succeed, and she will be a great sounding board, even if she's not a business expert or a tech expert or whatever it is. Your mother knows you, and your mother can be someone, or your family or your sister or whoever, brother, best friend. It doesn't even have to be family. It can be your chosen family, you name it. These are people that you should also try to find an escape in, because one, they love you, they care about you, they want you to win. And so that can be a really healthy distraction as well. I'm also a big proponent of like animals. Like I have a furry black cat, Jasper, who's like my baby, and he is just like the best thing ever. And he allows me to also find time to play, travel if you can, and really just take time to just, even if it's 5 minutes a day, take a walk, go to your roof, go to your backyard, do something that you're not just glued to your desk and to your emails. I mean, that is just not a fun way to go about your work. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to turn yourself off, mute the notifications on Slack, on email, take time to yourself, because at the end of the day, you will not be able to produce your best work if you are always working. It's literally that simple.
That is some great advice. And speaking of that, someone who is maybe in their first year of business, what advice would you give them?
Do not give up. Do not give up. Do not give up. Do not give up. We need as many Black-owned businesses as possible. That's number one. Number two, it's not easy. I said this earlier on the show that, there's people that try to make it seem like, I just got this check of $5 million and I'm doing this and that. It is not easy, especially in year one. Okay. You're just figuring out what it is that's resonating with your customers, how you should potentially market. I mean, you're learning so much about how you also work on your own, whether you're managing a team, whether you're a solopreneur. You have to give yourself that first year to really get a grounding. You can't just expect for the foundation to be able to build this huge legacy brand when you haven't given yourself enough time to be able to fail. And I also say that failure is so good. You have to fail forward. don't be afraid to put yourself out there. The first time you do it, yeah, it's going to be shit. But you know what? The 10th time, the 100th time, it's going to be so much better. And so you can never, ever, ever get defeated by being told no. Embrace rejection, accept failure, know that it's going to make you stronger. And once you realize how resilient you are in your first year of business, everything else that gets thrown your way, it's still going to be hard, but it's not going to be enough to defeat you or to ever think that you should be doing something else. I think, as Black people, we are so strong. I think being business owners is in our DNA. And, it's something that you can always tap into. Lean into your strengths, especially in year one, because that's what's really going to set you apart.
Felt that. Don't give up. Love it. And my final question is what does it mean to you to be Black in business?
Oh my God. That's the only reason why I'm existing. Well, it means so much to me. And I know I said this earlier, Monique, but, just being one of the few Black-owned tech PR agencies in the media capital of the world, I'm like, there should be so much more. There should be so many ways and opportunities to help our community flourish. And PR is something that is so impactful. And I've seen what PR can do for businesses. I've seen a press story or a podcast help a company get thousands of new customers, new users. I've seen it attract investors. I've seen it be able to get them to the next level. And so being able to be one of the few and truthfully the only New York-based Black PR agency that is catered to tech companies and startups and venture capitalists, it's an honor. And, my ancestor, Carter G. Woodson, who is the founder of Black History Month, he was also a publicist, a journalist, a publisher, because he understood the importance and how powerful media was in telling your story. And most importantly, amplifying Black voices can be. And so I'm really keeping that legacy alive with my business. And I anticipate in the next year or so, Brennan Nevada Inc., all of our clients in business will be 100% Black.
Love that. It is in your DNA. I love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I gotta live up to it.
You gotta live up to it. You can't give up. So I love it.
Right.
And this has been phenomenal. And I just want to thank you again and even just for driving that home, what we just spoke about, because I know for so many people, it can feel so heavy and so tough. And just like even your energy, hearing it and like, I love it. I don't see it any other way. And I just thank you for bringing that type of energy and also that hope. And thank you again for the work that you are doing. We appreciate you.
Monique, I appreciate you so much. And I think you captured everything. And thank you for this amazing platform.
Yeah.
We need more Moniques, we need more Brennans, and hopefully, someone can learn a lot from the show.
Agreed. Thank you again. Another amazing and fruitful conversation. I just love Brennan's energy, and I'm so glad that we got to have her on the show. And we explored so much today, from how to secure press coverage, even when it feels like there's no big news, which I know a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to. And I really wanted to have her on the show to discuss this because I know it's truly important. And she also shares some incredible insights on crafting your narrative and connecting with the media and proving that your story is always worth telling, no matter the circumstances. And Brennan has such an impressive background. She's worked with some amazing brands like Solo Funds, as we mentioned, and we've had the opportunity of having on the podcast. And her even speaking about her ancestor, Carter G. Woodson's legacy of championing Black history and storytelling. She has it in her DNA. And Brennan reminds us all of the power behind our narratives. And it's about time we take control of our stories and ensure that they are heard. Again, we appreciate you for being a part of the Black to Business family, and let's keep pushing the culture forward together. So for more resources and to learn more about Brennan, just head over to blacktobusiness.com/220, and I will see you back here next week. But I would love to know what you thought about this episode, so be sure to tag us on Instagram at @Black to Business. See you next week. Same time, same place. Later.